Athens, the cradle of democracy, the forge of philosophy, the city where art and war danced hand in hand, and where the rise of reason often clashed with the chaos of ambition. But how did a humble collection of hills become the heart of a civilization that changed the world? This is the story of Athens, its myths, its glory, its triumphs and its tragedies. From the fog of legend to the fire of revolution, this is the entire history of one of the greatest cities the world has ever known. Long before the Parthenon crowned the Acropolis, before Socrates ever questioned a soul, there was a myth, a contest. The gods Poseidon and Athena vied for control over a nameless land. Poseidon struck the rock with his trident, summoning a salty spring. But Athena gave the olive tree, a symbol of peace, of prosperity, of life, and the people chose her gift. Thus the city was named Athens, and its patron would be the goddess of wisdom. Of course, behind every myth lies a kernel of truth. Archaeologists tell us that human settlements in Athens date back to at least 3000 BCE. Neolithic farmers settled the rocky terrain, building lives in the shadow of what would one day become an empire. By the late Bronze Age, Athens was a Mycenaean stronghold, a citadel fortified on the Acropolis. Even in these early days, the city stood apart, not in wealth or power, but in potential. By 800 BCE, Athens began to organize itself into a polis, a city-state. But it was far from democratic. The land was controlled by aristocratic families, the Eupatridae, the well-born. And as the rich grew richer, the poor sank deeper into debt. Some sold themselves into slavery to survive. Others rose in rebellion. Athens was a powder keg. And in 594 BCE, the city handed a match to a man named Solon. Solon, a wise aristocrat, was given extraordinary powers to prevent civil war. And he delivered. He cancelled debts, abolished debt slavery, reorganized the classes by wealth rather than birth. And most importantly, he gave citizens a voice. Not a loud one, more a whisper, but a voice nonetheless. A council of 400, an assembly. A chance for commoners to participate, however slightly, in governance. But reform is a double-edged sword. Solon left the city voluntarily, perhaps fearing what would follow. And what followed was Pisistratus, a cunning populist who seized power 3 times and finally ruled as a tyrant. But he was no monster. He supported the arts, built infrastructure, and honored the gods. When he died, his sons inherited power. And then lost it. Athens fell into chaos once again, until a new reformer emerged. In 508 BCE, Cleisthenes set Athens on a new path, radically reorganizing its political structure. He broke up traditional tribal lines and formed 10 new voting units called demes, mixing rich and poor alike. He created the Council of 500, selected by lot. Every male citizen now had a real stake in the city's future. Athens didn't invent democracy in a day, but it was Cleisthenes who planted its roots. The idea was revolutionary. Power not in the hands of kings or tyrants, but in the hands of the people. At least the male land-owning citizens. Still, for the time, it was lightning in a bottle. Democracy had barely taken its first breath when war came knocking. In 490 BCE, King Darius of Persia sent an armada to crush Athens for supporting a revolt in Ionia. Outnumbered and outmatched, the Athenians met the Persians on the plains of Marathon. And against all odds, they won. The Battle of Marathon became legend. A young runner, Phidippides, is said to have sprinted the 26 miles back to Athens, shouted, "We have won!" and collapsed. But Persia was not done. In 480 BCE, Darius's son, Xerxes, launched a massive invasion. Athens turned to Themistocles, a brilliant general who had urged the city to build a navy. That navy would become Athens' salvation. At the Battle of Salamis, Athenian triremes lured the Persian fleet into narrow straits and annihilated them. The tide had turned. Athens had defended Greece and earned its place as a superpower. After the Persian Wars, Athens didn't merely rebuild its walls or repair its ships. It reimagined itself brick by brick, law by law, idea by idea. Like a phoenix rising from ash, the city seized victory and turned it into vision. And at the helm of this transformation stood one man, Pericles. Pericles was more than a politician. He was an architect of destiny, a statesman with the mind of a philosopher and the will of a general. He saw what Athens could become, not just a military power, but a cultural beacon to the known world. At first, the Delian League had been a mutual defense pact, a coalition of Greek city-states united against the Persian threat. But as years passed, what began as an alliance became an empire in all but name. The treasury, once kept on the sacred island of Delos, was moved to Athens, and with it came wealth. Tributes from allies, gold from the Aegean, and silver from the mines of Laurion poured into the city like a river. Pericles didn't hoard this fortune for himself. He invested it, not in war machines, but in wonders. The skyline of Athens was reborn. At its summit, the Parthenon, a temple so perfectly proportioned it seemed to defy time itself, rose to honor Athena, the city's patron goddess. Every marble column whispered reverence. Every frieze told stories of gods and mortals, of glory and grace. But Athens' beauty wasn't just carved in stone. It was performed, painted and philosophized. Art flourished like never before. Sculptors like Phidias chiseled gods into human form, divinity made flesh. Painters adorned pottery with tales of battle and love. Playwrights, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, staged dramas that plumbed the depths of human emotion. In the open-air theaters of Dionysus, as many as 15,000 citizens sat shoulder to shoulder, laughing, weeping, reflecting on the nature of fate. Yet even as Athens celebrated myth, it questioned reality. For on the streets of the Agora walked a man with no wealth, no office, and no fear of ignorance, Socrates. The stonemason turned philosopher spent his days asking the hardest questions. What is justice? What is virtue? What is the good life? He spoke not in temples but in markets, not with sermons but with questions. His method, relentless dialogue, an intellectual boxing match that drew admirers and enemies alike. His student, Plato, would take these questions further, imagining a world of perfect forms where truth lived beyond the veil of appearances. And Plato's student, Aristotle, brought those ideals back down to earth, charting the stars, categorizing plants, defining logic, ethics, and politics with clinical precision. Athens, under Pericles, had become more than a city. It was a school of thought, a canvas of the divine, and a mirror held up to the human soul. In this golden age, ideas had weight. Debate had power. Even the lowliest citizen could stand in the assembly and shape the future with their vote. As the proverb goes, a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. That was Athens, a city that planted the seeds of democracy, reason, and human dignity, not for itself alone, but for centuries yet to come. A city of reason, of freedom, of fire. And though the flame would flicker, the light it cast would never truly go out. But as the old saying goes, pride goes before a fall. Athens' dominance bred resentment, and Sparta, its fierce militaristic rival, had had enough. The Peloponnesian War broke out in 431 BCE, and for nearly 3 decades Greece tore itself apart. Athens, rich in culture, powerful at sea. Sparta, iron-willed, unbeatable on land. At first, the war seemed like a stalemate, but plague struck Athens, killing thousands, including Pericles. And over time, missteps and betrayals drained the city's strength. In 404 BCE, Athens surrendered. Its walls were torn down, its empire dismantled, its democracy for a time replaced by Spartan puppets. Even Socrates could not survive the fallout. Accused of corrupting the youth, he was sentenced to death by the very democracy he once questioned. It was the end of an era, but Athens would not disappear. Though its power waned, its influence endured. When Philip II of Macedon conquered Greece, he spared Athens, and his son, Alexander the Great, was tutored by Aristotle himself, a student of Athens, even as he built an empire far beyond its borders. Under Hellenistic and Roman rule, Athens became a city of learning, a place of pilgrimage for philosophers and statesmen. The Roman orator Cicero called it the school of the world. Though its armies were gone, its ideas remained sharp. Democracy may have dimmed, but the light of reason still burned. Athens faded from the center of power, slowly becoming a quiet corner of the Byzantine and later Ottoman world. But its story was never forgotten. The ideals of Athens, freedom, inquiry, citizenship, would sleep for centuries, then awaken during the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the birth of modern democracy. Today, every courtroom, every university, every constitution built on the will of the people owes a debt to Athens. It taught us that even the smallest city can have the loudest voice, that ideas, though fragile, can outlive empires, and that to question, to reason, and to dream is to be truly free. Athens was not perfect. Its democracy excluded many. Its empire was often cruel, but in its striving, it gave humanity something precious, a glimpse of what civilization could be. If you've enjoyed this journey into the past, remember to like and subscribe for more epic histories from around the world. And tell us in the comments, what ancient civilization should we explore next? Until then, this is World Chronicles, where history lives again